to let's see, last went live, everyone was telling me that my microphone wasn't working. So I think I kind of figured that part out. Um, so I think we are good on that. Gonna wait a couple of minutes, let this kind of build and let people come in. Really, what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to be talking about why you are struggling with being disciplined and what that really means. So, oftentimes people say, well, I'm motivated to do things. I'm very motivated, right? But you lack the consistency to do it. Maybe motivated, but are you disciplined enough to continue to do what you're doing, right? So, it all boils down to is are you going to do the things that you say you're going to do down to your integrity? And it goes down to, you know, like, what are you going to do? It's January 2025. It's January 2025. And what we're going to do is we need to start doing what we say we're going to do. So I'm always reminded of New Year's resolutions where people say, oh, well, this year I'm going to do these things and I'm going to get better on these things. And by February, none of those things happened. None of those things ever existed, and no one did what they were said that they were going to do. And that's really because we always put off tomorrow what we could do today. We always put off, well, tomorrow I'm going to do this. Well, tomorrow I'm going to go to the gym. Well, tomorrow I'm going to start my diet. Well, tomorrow I'm going to start waking up earlier. Tomorrow I'm going to make my bed. Tomorrow I'm going to do my homework assignment. Tomorrow I'm going to finish that room that I said I was going to finish. Tomorrow I'm going to paint that bathroom that I said I was going to paint, right? We always put off tomorrow what could be done today. And that's because we lack discipline and we struggle with discipline. And that is okay to struggle with discipline and to lack discipline. It's okay. It really is. So I just kind of wanted to talk about that today for a little bit because discipline is incredibly important, right? We're going to talk about why it's important. We're going to talk about why people struggle with discipline, and we're going to talk about how you can overcome that. That's what we're going to talk about in this session right here, right now. So, why is discipline important? Because it sets your foundation for success, right? It's so important that if you don't do what you say you're going to do, then you're never going to establish those habits, those healthy habits of getting after what you're supposed to get after. Discipline is doing those small, consistent things when motivation wanes, right? And so I'm reminded of a quote by Aristotle, and he says, we are what we repeatedly do." So excellence then is not an act, but a habit. Think about that for a second. If you want to be excellent, that's not by accident. It's because you've chosen to do the things that you need to do to get better. Hey Owen, how you doing? And then everyone coming in and listening to this, I really appreciate it. Say hi, say where you're from. We're going to get to a stopping point where I'll probably ask you some questions and then get your feedback. Because I also want to know what your thoughts on this are as well, too. But so if we are what we can repeatedly say we're going to do, then that's who you are today. Not for what you're going to do in the future, but for the sum total of all the things you've done in the past, that is who you are today. And so if you find yourself being undisciplined and struggling with discipline, keep that in your mind, right? Why else is it important? Well, discipline is important because it helps us provide focus and clarity on our goals and our objectives and what we want to do. I just published a podcast last week about our vision for 2025 and what we want to do and what our visions are. So, what are your visions for 2025? And what are those goals that you need to do to get you to your vision for next year? Okay. The other thing we need to think about when it comes to discipline is it makes sure that you are proactive instead of reactive, right? We need to be forward thinking. We need to be in the front of our seats, getting ready to react and getting ready to act instead of being reactive. How many of you feel like whenever, whichever way the wind blows or whichever way the ocean takes the tide and pushes the buoy in the water, that's where you're going to go? Whatever life throws at you, that's what you're going to do and that's what you're going to accept because you have no clue where you want to go or what you want to do. That is a result of a lack of discipline, right? The other thing that's critically important about discipline is making sure that we hold ourselves accountable to ourselves. We need to make sure that we do what we say we're going to do because that makes us better to ourselves. Now, I'm going to say this, right? Nobody knows the biggest lies that you've told yourself except for you. Think about that for a second. Nobody knows all the lies that you've told everybody else except for you. And why is that? Because you told yourself 1,000 times, well, I'm going to start this tomorrow. I'm going to start that tomorrow. I'm going to start this time. I'm going to start that time. And you don't. You never start it because you keep lying to yourself about it, right? Then we need to make sure that when you think about disciplines, that we start thinking about how can we establish small wins to keep us motivated to keep going? How could we keep going and keep doing with the small wins that we're doing, right? So that's why discipline is so important because it keeps us focused on our goals and our objectives and our vision, and it makes us the habits and the foundations for our success. Now, why are people struggling with discipline? There's a whole bunch of reasons of why people are struggling with discipline. And one of the biggest one is because they lack clear goals and objectives. People really don't know what you want to do or what you want to achieve. You may think you do, right? But how many times will somebody ask you, "Hey, so what are your goals? What are your objectives? What do you want to do?" And you're like, "Ah," and you're paused, and you're like, "I don't know. What do I want to do? Where do I want to go?" Well, that's because you don't know. That's why you're struggling with discipline, and you have a hard time committing to something that you're doing because you don't know what you're doing. It's hard to commit to something that you don't know what you're going to start to commit to. So if you're listening to this right now and you're watching this, go ahead in the comments down in the comments, go ahead and put what are some of your goals and objectives this year? What is it that you're going to do and get after? And we'll take a couple of look at them and make sure they're actionable goals, something that you could break down and make them consistent and things that you can actually do. So I'm interested in what you have to say on that one, right? And so with that, with those goals and clearly defined, you can't just say, I want to be healthier. I want to live a healthier lifestyle. That's not really actionable. What does that really mean? But what you can say is, I want to take 10,000 steps every single day. That is something you can do. That is something that you can control and only you can control, and nobody else can control that for you. Nothing else can control that. Only that can control it for you. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for joining in. So after they're actionable, we need to make sure that we kind of remove emotions for our decision making. We need to take those out because if we become emotional about it, the only thing that's going to drive us at that point is motivation. It's not going to be discipline. It's not going to be doing the things even though we don't want to do it. It's just going to be doing the things just because it's easier to do. And it's just what life throws at you. So you got to make sure you kind of eliminate the emotional decision making, right? And then when things get tough and things get uncomfortable, you need to learn to be comfortable to be uncomfortable because that's where growth happens, right? You grow when you're uncomfortable. You grow when you're not quite in your comfortable zone. That's where growth happens. And we stop with our discipline because it becomes uncomfortable, right? I don't know how many times, someone, how many times have you stood out in the rain and just endured it with no umbrella or nothing else just because you wanted to endure it? To see how long you could stand outside in the cold, in the rain for as long as you could, just because, right? It takes discipline. Not many people want to do that. You also need to make sure that we learn how to delay instant gratification. That's the biggest killer right there of discipline. All too often, you can get anything and everything you want right now. You can. You can get anything and everything you want at the snap of your fingers. You can literally do it. If you want some food, DoorDash, done. Microwave, done. Right? But did you sit the time to prepare the meal and make it better? No. But you got what you wanted right then and there. You don't like the show that's on TV? Cool. I just changed the channel. I just changed the app. I just changed what I'm watching because I don't like it anymore. And I can, right? Instant gratification. Well, when you're focusing on being disciplined and the gratification doesn't happen, then that starts to dwindle and to wane on you, right? So, how do you learn to take that away? How do you learn to delay gratification? And the only way to do that is by doing it, right? Also, you need to learn that failure does not mean failure. It means learning something new. You learned something didn't work. You're modifying what you've learned to make sure that you can start again in a better position. And I really think that's a um, great way to think about it because Henry Ford, he actually had a quote, and he said that failure is the only opportunity to begin again, and this time more intelligently. So what that means is like I failed at something, so you could start again knowing what you knew before, but starting again. Often I hear people say, well, if I would have known what I knew 10 years ago, I would have been in a better place. Well, you can still do that. You're still in a better place. Just start again. You just got to start again and start doing it and improve your discipline on that. So I just wanted to wrap this up real quick with a way to overcome struggling with being disciplined, right? How do we overcome struggling with discipline? Well, it's pretty pretty simple. The first thing we got to do is we got to define your why, right? What is it that you need to do? How are we going to get after it? What is your motivational factor behind it? Then you need to start small. I offer up that you say you're going to make your bed every single day. That is something that requires discipline. It's something that you can do anytime and you can actually do it. It's something that you don't have to wait for the perfect time and weather or conditions or anything else. It's there, it's readily available. You could do it every single day, right? Then you got to create a system. So I said I'm going to make my bed every day. So when am I going to make my bed? What time of day am I going to make my bed? When is it more optimal for me to make my bed? How am I going to get after doing that? Then you need to be able to track your progress, right? Put like a little calendar on the wall and put a check mark every time you did it. Track your habit of getting better every single day at doing it, right? Then you need to celebrate your small wins. So in this instance, you said we're going to make our bed every day as a way to improve our discipline, right? So if that's what we're going to do and I'm marking it, I can say after 15 days of making my bed, I'm going to give myself like $5, or I'm going to go buy myself an ice cream cone, or I'm going to go do something that I want. I'm going to go buy a candy, or I'm going to go do something. Find a way to reward yourself for your consistency and progress. And it helps keep you motivated along the way. And then you need to share it with somebody so that way you could be held accountable for what you say you're going to do, right? Part of being disciplined is being accountable for it. If you know that people are relying on you to perform and to do something, you're going to be more consistent in doing it because you don't want to disappoint yourself and you don't want to disappoint other people. Okay. And then you kind of need to reframe failure like we talked about. Just because you failed at it once doesn't mean that you won't fail at it again. And it also means that you won't succeed the third or the fourth or the fifth time that you try. So keep starting from a position further towards your goal or closer towards your goal on that one. Right. And so when we do this, we need to make sure that we have our focus in mind and we're clear about what we're talking about. So, everyone who's joined in today, I really appreciate you joining in. Why do we struggle with discipline? Well, there's a lot of reasons, and we've talked about it. And I really like to hear more. So, if you want to continue the conversation in the comments, I appreciate that. So, two things I'm going to ask for you. One, uh, tell me, what are your goals and how are they actionable and how are you going to get after them this year? And two, if you haven't liked or subscribed to this show or anything else, please do that before you go and move on to the next thing. I really appreciate you tuning in and spending time with me today. Talk to you later.